Todd Palmer is the coordinator of For All Thursdays that are out in Burlington. He is a part of Bearing Witness, which hosts full-on demonstrations, standouts from 11 to 1 every Wednesday. Well, I guess 2 weeks ago it was canceled because there was no place to stand.
That's correct. It's a great story if you want to get into that.
We will.
Yeah.
And is working to de-ice Hanscom with folks out there and is really devoted to this. He is a member of the Greater Assabet Indivisible Network, actually a board member, and is incredibly active in the organizing that's going on out in Burlington. And before we go any further with this, I should say I have been going out there for many months myself, not as a journalist, but rather as a participant in the standout. And I think it's important that I clarify that I'm not a neutral on this moving train. Todd, welcome to Radio with a View.
Yeah, good morning. Nice to be here on this very, very cold Sunday morning.
It is cold. So what happened 2 weeks ago?
So 2 weeks ago, we had the big snowstorm Sunday night into Monday, and the total I heard for Burlington was 22 inches. And
sounds right.
Yeah, and so the organizers, they allowed them to live in the Burlington area, and they assessed the site, and they posted a real short video clip of the giant mounds of snow on the usual green where we gather outside the ice facility, and they decided that we'd better cancel. Well, some of the participants, including myself, and I'll have to say my buddy Greg, threw the first shovelful, but we arrived early on Wednesday for the canceled event, and we started shoveling, and more people arrived, and they started shoveling, and by the time the organizers arrived, we had cleared a little space, and by the time it was done that day, we had a small hockey rink worth of area cleared. We had about 6 shovels going, and we had dozens of people chip in, taking 10-minute shifts on the shovels. And we just thought it was really important that space be cleared, that we preserve it. We knew the weather was going to stay cold. And so that was a remarkable feat, and people seem to have really appreciated all the effort that went into that, because we are not backing down. Nothing is going to stop us, and if we have to shovel 22 inches of snow to clear a space so that we can have a gathering, we'll do it.
How many people are usually in attendance on a Wednesday, a more accommodating Wednesday?
Yeah, a typical Wednesday, regardless of weather, has been at least 500 plus, I think, now for several months. Last week, they had a contingent of veterans come in from Northampton, and we had about somewhere between 60 and 90 of them, and we ferried them in from a local church, and the gathering was just under 1,000. I don't have an exact count on that, but it was so tight in that little hockey rink type sized area, and they were up and down the street on both sides of the street, and it was beautiful and joyous, and we heard some amazing speeches from a couple of veterans, and very inspiring.
Very, very powerful.
Yes, indeed.
I just want to note that according to our colleague Allie Stoughton, who does a radio show here at MBR on Mondays, she says it got to minus 10 degrees in North Adams at about 7 a.m. this morning. Very, very cold.
Better you than me.
And that leads me to a follow-up question, Todd Palmer. You say nothing's going to stop you.
That's correct.
You say that even after seeing what happened in D.C. and families, doors kicked down in Chicago, the riotous behavior in L.A. and now Minneapolis. Terrible things, deaths, killings in Minneapolis. Go more deep into what makes you say nothing's gonna stop you.
Yeah, there's the snow incident, and then there's Minneapolis itself. So I believe she was killed on a Wednesday, which meant that our event, Justice for All Thursdays, was the very next day, and we didn't know what was going to happen. We got there that day, and we are usually a crowd of about 75 people, give or take, on Thursdays. Well, that Thursday we were 175. So it was incredibly heartening to us that it was more people than usual showed up. We had some politicians, some candidates for office that showed up. So we ended up with a very, make it up as you go along program. We ended up with 5 or 6 different speakers, all who wanted to speak out about what had just happened in Minneapolis, and encouraging to me. But that's another aspect. It gives me the confidence. Nothing is going to stop people. And Wednesday, had that been, let's say Monday or Tuesday when that happened, that Wednesday crowd would have been enormous. And in fact, the following Wednesday, bearing witness had its all-time high for then 930. The Wednesday after Renee Good was killed.
Mm-hmm. Todd, we're talking to Todd Palmer. He is one of the coordinators at Bearing Witness. He is the coordinator for Justice for All Thursdays, the every week event that's been going on for many, many months, and we'll get into some of the backstory on that, is usually on Wednesday. But there are also events that are out at Hanscom Field. There's an effort made to de-ice Hanscom and to stop the transportation that's going out of Hanscom Air Base. It's really an expanding movement. Are there counter-demonstrators of these?
There are. In recent months, there's been a small band, usually the same ones that you tend to see all the time. Mostly on Saturdays. There'll be a dozen or 15 people on Saturdays, and they go out with their giant Trump flags. And it's been, relatively peaceful, although they do look to be instigating. They'll be there with a bullhorn, and they'll be shouting at us all kinds of, terrible things. But it has remained peaceful. The police have been aware, and at times they've separated the two groups and assigned, one group to one side of the street and the other to the other, or they have split the green so that at least these groups are not mingling together. Other days of the week, they're not as numerous, but we have had people show up on Wednesdays and Thursdays, small groups, 2-3 people, drive up and down the street waving a Trump flag out of the car. And really, the crowd has showed enormous restraint. Regardless of what they say, we ignore. And that's been so successful. In fact, the last time I saw them there on a Wednesday, it was a woman shouting, that we support rapists and all kinds of other nasty stuff like that. And so one of the organizing committee members, Reverend Andrew Harris, just started singing, "We Shall Not Be Moved." And the crowd took it up and drowned out this lone voice, and we went on as normal.
You folks are taking composure lessons. Let me ask you this. What would it take, or have you ever experienced a Bruce Coburn, I wish I had a rocket launcher moment?
So what would it take?
For you to get to that, I wish I had a rocket launcher moment, because composure only goes so far.
Right. As a organizer myself, I have my 10-15 minutes at the microphone every week, and I channel my energy, my anger, and my frustration into that, because the other will just lead to more escalation. And I'll say all the Bearing Witness organizers, they're all powerful speakers. They are all calm voices calling for nonviolent resistance. And then each and every time you go on a Wednesday to Bearing Witness at ICE, you will take a nonviolence pledge. They ask the 3 questions. Do you support immigrants? Do you believe in the Constitution? And do you agree to be nonviolent?
Have there been any confrontations with either the police or with ICE itself?
No. ICE will sometimes, come out. They will have to ask people, if people that don't know the rules, there's a certain area that we are cordoned off. We're allowed to be on this little green. We are not allowed to approach the building, to go into the parking lot. And so sometimes new people If they didn't pay attention during the logistics part of the presentation, they'll walk off into an area that they're not allowed to be in or directly in front of the building, and either the police or ICE will come out and ask them to leave. Most of the time, that's all it takes, and they'll just tell them, no, please stay, on the other side of the cones, and people move back, and that's the end of it.
Todd Palmer, one question that seems pertinent to me right at this moment, because I get there by car. It's a fairly long schlep, and I can't get there by the buses, which are very infrequent. So there's an effort being made to actually tow people who have been parking in the mall lot. And I know this may seem trivial to some listeners, but it's really not, because it's an effort made by the people who are running that, and it's not clear where it's coming from entirely, but maybe you could speak to that. And what are people doing instead?
Yeah, so the location of the ICE facility is on District Ave in Burlington. This is a office park. It's surrounded by office buildings, but it is directly next to the Burlington Mall. And for months, when I first started going on Wednesdays in July, the plan was pretty standard. We had the overflow parking lot at the Burlington Mall, which would be the last place that a Burlington Mall shopper would ever want to park. That was open and available to us, and the mall was aware that we were parking there, and it made it very convenient for senior citizens or people with limited mobility to park there. And then you had maybe a 200-yard walk directly to the green, and it made it incredibly easy for people to go. Now, the crowd does tend to be older. There's a lot of retirees. A lot of working age people are just unable to go at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday. So that's what made it incredibly convenient for people. Now, in December, there was an incident, and the mall decided that they don't want us to park in that overflow lot anymore. They blocked it off.
Let me just interrupt you. What kind of an incident?
So my understanding is that a singing group went into the mall, and, it's Christmas season, and they did some humorous caroling at ICE's expense, did it in the central atrium at the mall, and the mall didn't care for that. And their reaction was to essentially blame all of the protest groups that use that space. As you know, singing cannot be prevented by where you park. So I never did get the connection directly to those things. That I understand that they don't want political statements.
That's fine. It's purely punishment and discouragement.
Group punishment.
Yeah.
So, there was one change. And then all of a sudden in January, the owners of most of the property within District Ave, that area called National Development, they put up signs saying starting January 28th, you will be towed if you park at the district, and you're not a patron or a tenant, we'll tow you. And we showed up that first Wednesday, not a coincidence that the first day of that policy was a Wednesday, and there was a tow truck running right at the beginning of the street, and they meant business. So there's been about, I would say at this point, a half a dozen people that have been towed. Obviously not a pleasant experience. And to me, the most humorous part about it is if you look at the area on Google Maps, it is a giant parking lot. There is so much unused parking. It's amazing. The Burlington Mall at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday is not exactly Black Friday every Wednesday. About 3/4 of those spaces are unused. The district itself has a bunch of significant office buildings right where we meet on the green. You can overlook the parking for a building that the FAA leases. That lot alone would have more than enough spaces for at least half of the protesters to park there. They're unused. There's 2 parking garages within the district. They are largely half capacity most of the time. But they are the property owners. If they don't want us parking there to exercise our First Amendment rights, they are the property owners. And people have been finding their own clever solutions around these issues. And will continue to do so because it's important that we're there.
You're listening to Radio with a View, produced and hosted by Mark Stern And I'm Dave Goodman, sitting behind the board and co-hosting this week. For those of you going to our track-blaster.com page, it does say that this week's show is Sound and Fury. The fact that Mark and I alternate seems to be an issue for the programmers who make our Track Blaster page available to the public. It's something we're trying to resolve. But this is Radio with a View on WMBR in Cambridge at 88.1 FM and WMBR.org. The views and opinions expressed here are those of the participants and not necessarily those of the staff and management of WMBR, MIT, or the Technology Broadcasting Corporation.
One of the things that people are wondering, I'm sure, is, well, people are standing out. What good does that do? What is the impact of people standing in this industrial park week in, week out? And does it make a difference?
Absolutely, it makes a difference. So, we're there for several reasons. We're there to oppose what's going on, and to do so in such numbers gets a lot of press attention, and it raises awareness to the whole situation. The other thing is direct support to the immigrants. So from the very beginning, Bearing Witness has put together resources that can help people. There's multiple reasons why immigrants show up at this facility. They may be showing up for a check-in appointment. They may come looking for loved ones who have been detained. Sometimes they don't know where. They just know that they've been taken, so they may come looking for information. And now there is an effort. From the beginning, they've also been collecting food. And they bring that food and they give it to immigration-based charities, and it's thousands of pounds of food that have been collected there on Wednesdays. On Thursdays, we are very fortunate. We have one of our regular attendees, a nice woman named Tony, decided she wanted to distribute food directly to the immigrants. So she sets up there at a little table. She buys all of her stuff at Costco, and she stands there with a sign that says free food in Spanish and English. And when people pull in, she just waves at them, looks approachable, and if they are wanting some free food, they take a bag of free food. If there's a child in the car, they generally get a book or a little toy of some kind. And then we find that brings in an interesting opportunity that if they take some free food, we can also offer the immigration resources, point them to some organizations that can really help out. A lot of these people don't know what they're up against. Navigating the immigration system is really difficult. I've been studying it for months now, and it is incredibly complicated. So resources that can help them get some legal help, just material that's so basic, but really unknown. If they have never been there before, they might not know what they're facing.
Yeah, it's also really important that people understand what's going on inside that building. This is not simply the ICE center for members of ICE to be there. It's not simply a bureaucratic center. It is being used as a holding pen, and it's being used with people sleeping on bare concrete, inadequate food. This is a very, very difficult situation for the people on the inside. Do you think they know what's going on? Does it matter that there are people on the outside?
They do. We actually have heard multiple times that when people are inside the building in the lobby area, as is the case a lot for their appointments, they can actually hear us outside. So when they arrive, if there are people on site, it's nice for them to see some signs and see that some people are there to support them. We have musicians that come in and play during this time period, and therefore they hear some joy outside. And then, when they emerge, we are there. We're always happy to see people coming out of the building because it means that they made it out of their appointment for another day. And we all just wave at them. Just try to be a friendly face.
This is a group that began how? How did Bearing Witness come into being?
Great question. I really have to acknowledge today that I am doing my best to stand in for one of the organizing committee, one of the founders of this whole movement, Jared Berezin, and his wife Lori started this whole thing way back in April of last year. They somehow got wind of what was happening at this facility and decided, well, let's just go. Let's just go. They made a couple of signs and stood out there. And the following week, they invited some people. The next week was maybe 20 people. And then things just kind of spread out from there. It wasn't until June or July that I heard about it, and I went. And at that time, they were probably more like 200 and 300 size crowds. And so I've watched it grow from that to, 500 like clockwork every week showing up there. It's an extraordinary thing. They've kept it peaceful. Our presence there is incredibly important. We tend not to, in Massachusetts, we haven't seen the tear gas and the pepper spray and all of those awful tactics that we've seen used in other places of the country. And I think one of the reasons we haven't seen that is because of the presence of bearing witness every Wednesday for 42 weeks.
Well, let me follow up on that. We've been talking to a number of organizations, asking them what their plans are if ICE surges in the Boston area, or Boston or Cambridge. We've spoken to the Luce Network. We've spoken to Community Labor United. We've spoken to a representative, a vice president of SEIU, 32BJ. And next week on Sound and Fury, we'll hear from the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I don't know how bearing witness fits into some of these more activist organization environment, but are you considering plans for how things may change in your approach or what you will do if they come here?
Right. Well, we've had speakers from Luce, from Bijan, from Fuerza. We encourage all of our participants, if they can, to volunteer or to donate to one of these organizations because they are doing the really hard work out there in the streets, being the community watch group. Bijan does amazing work bailing people out or getting people out on bond if they are detained. So, we're not seeking to displace that, but we are seeking more people to volunteer for those organizations or at least to contribute if they can't physically do it themselves. As for what happens with the next surge, we've already been through, Operation Patriot 1, Operation Patriot 2, and it's almost, to me, it's, we see the activity go up and go down, but we see it all the time. It's very rare that we are there, particularly on a Thursday, when we don't see immigrants coming and going. This past Thursday, we met a woman there named Vivian, who was there to accompany someone to their appointment, and the person she was accompanying was not let out, was detained there. So we see this as an everyday thing, and in some ways it doesn't matter so much whether it's a surge currently or not. It happens every day.
One of the things that you're talking about here is connecting to those larger organizations, but much of the participation is being made by people who are very, very neighborhood or community oriented and are, if they're in organizations at all, it's in widely dispersed organizations. Are these organizations connecting, networking?
Yes. Well, I live in Shrewsbury, and through my work with Bearing Witness and being on site and meeting people, there's a natural inclination to say, wow, these people are doing it in Waltham and Fuerza. What's going on in my neck of the woods? And so I got connected into Luce in Worcester, and I've gone out and done some canvassing work. And the challenges are different depending on where exactly you are. Areas with heavy immigrant populations like Framingham and Marlborough get hit pretty hard, have been getting, and are continuing to get hit hard. It might not be like that in every community. So the needs can be different. And there's a lot of different ways. I didn't understand this myself. I thought that Luce was mostly their hotline. If you see ICE, call Luce, and everybody should have that number in their phone. But they do much more than that, I have come to learn. So they can provide post support for people who are detained, support for the family. They do a lot of direct aid. When you have a loved one who's detained, they might be the breadwinner for that family. You've got lost wages. Your bills keep continuing. Then on top of it, you might have lawyer fees just to do things like post bond. So there's a lot of different ways to get involved, and the more people that can be part of their own community's response to this, the better. The organizations are out there. So Luce is a great one, and I just want to say lucemass.org is their website. Bijan is another great one, and their website is beyondbond.com, I believe it is.
Remind us what the acronym
Absolutely.
Bijan
That's a great question. Luce is for Liberation, Union, Community, Esperanza, or Hope. Bijan is the Boston Immigrant Justice and Accompaniment Network.
Great. We're talking with Todd Palmer. He's representing primarily Bearing Witness this morning on Radio with a View. The local government and the state government are also responding and have something to say. And a group has formed called the Metro Mayors Coalition, led by Mayor Wu of Boston and Yi An Huang, the city manager of the city of Cambridge, the mayor of Chelsea, the mayor of Newton, several others. Let's just hear a short clip from the press conference that was given earlier this week. Here is Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu.
So today, in the spirit of every Bostonian who has refused to back down, from the Sons of Liberty to protesters at No Kings on the Common, from the workers who built our labor movement to the members of the Boston Vigilance Committee who made our city a stop on the Underground Railroad, from the parents who led the school desegregation movement to the immigrant activists who work every day to make Boston a home for everyone, we are standing tall and we are standing together. We are mayors and municipal leaders and community members from across Greater Boston, united in our refusal to let anyone fracture what we fought for. We will not allow the birthplace of American democracy to be knocked off our path by those who have turned their backs on our founding principles. Earlier today, I signed an executive order instructing city departments to take a range of actions to protect our residents and make clear that we will hold accountable anyone who commits violence, property damage, or any criminal conduct in the city of Boston, including federal officials.
Todd Palmer, how do you assess how local and state officials are going about their business vis-a-vis the federal government and ICE?
Well, I'm seeing an increase as of late that seems to be, driven by the Minnesota thing and a lot of people waking up to the reality. But, for those of us that have been attending Bearing Witness for months, we've been calling for this forever. I don't know what the right measures are. I understand very much that the state and local authorities are somewhat limited by the federal supremacy clause, but I think any attempt is a good attempt. I don't know that there's anything that the state can do that will, suddenly make our immigrant neighbors completely safe, but the point is they need to try. I like Mayor Wu's talk of accountability. One of the most effective things I think that's been done was by Governor Pritzker, who established a commission to preserve evidence. Now, they might not be able to prosecute in the near term, but by preserving witness testimony, sworn statements, all these videos that we see, these are crimes being committed in Massachusetts. And all of that needs to be preserved because someday we'll have a different president, we'll have a different attorney general and a different Department of Justice, and there is no statute of limitations on some of the most egregious crimes that we're seeing committed against our neighbors.
Do you know whether the city of Burlington has taken any formal position on this, on the building, and joined into that particular statement by the city leaders of the area?
Yes, so the building is an interesting topic. So, they're detaining people there for days at a time, including just recently. So there was a story that came out yesterday out of Portland about people that were transferred from Maine down to Burlington and multiple people spending 10 days in this facility. Now, why is that shocking? It's because this building is a converted office building. It was not built as a prison. When you convert an office building into a prison, you are going to have problems. Office buildings are not made to move people around safely within that building. So what do you do with that situation? That means you put people in a room and you keep them there 24 hours a day because you can't move them down to a dining hall to eat because you don't even have a kitchen to prepare food. You don't have a safe way to transport them and give them some outdoor time, so they're denied outdoor time. What it becomes very quickly is a violation of the Eighth Amendment against cruel and unusual punishments. Now, when the facility was first leased by ICE, I believe it was in 2007, and they told the city of Burlington that this was going to be a short-term processing facility and there was no reason why anyone would be there for longer than 12 hours. Well, that has been violated now for years. And so the city of Burlington has been slow to wake up to this. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's a city or the town of Burlington, either way, but they have done a resolution, and that has been spoken about at bearing witness, and the residents of Burlington have some power over their town council, but once again, we're dealing with a federal government, and its supremacy clause makes it difficult for them to enforce their local zoning laws. But there is no doubt the facility in Burlington is an illegal prison.
We're talking with Todd Palmer of Bearing Witness. I'm Dave Goodman. He's
Mark Stern.
And we're going to take a short break now and hear about some other programming here on WMBR.
I'm Allie Stoughton, the host of Not Brahms and Liszt, WMBR's modern classical music program. Join me each week for classical music of the 20th and 21st centuries, from Stravinsky to Tippett to Reich to Nyman to Francis Hode and onward, and with styles including minimalism, neoclassicism and romanticism, polystylism, and electronic, electroacoustic, and process music. Not Brahms and Liszt is on Monday afternoons from 4 to 5:30 here on WMBR in Cambridge, 88.1, first on your FM dial.
I need answers to my tax questions. Where can I find them?
Need answers? Try our interactive tax assistant on irs.gov/ITA. Simply select your tax questions, provide your information, and it gives you answers. Also, check our help and resources page and try our online tax map. 5,000 tax topics from A to Z. Plus, you can access forms, publications in a variety of formats.
See, we're not necessarily anti-federal government. We pay our taxes. Well, some of us do. And some of us have legitimate issues about withholding some of their taxes, as you and I have talked about many times over the years, Mark.
With withholders.
If you would like to interact with the program this morning, you can text us at 617-253-8810. 617-253-8810. That is our text line. Until we get our shiny, brand new equipment completely finalized and in the correct control room, we'll have phones available. And they may actually be working now. I'm a little reluctant to try integrating them into this conversation. Todd, I have a question for you that sort of revolves around this question of activism on the left politically and on the right politically. Over the decades, we've seen a lot of people sort of identified with the right wing in this country get very angry at the federal government, and we've seen government responses that border on very violent. Now we have a violent federal government from the right, a raid against the left progressives, liberals, if you will, some Democrats. In terms of your work as an advocate and an activist, where do you see your role, and are you surprised at how how this movement has grown in the context of us versus them, so to speak?
Yeah, I try not to worry about the us versus them. Millions of people supported Trump in the most recent election, and that's concerning to me, but they're going to be remaining in America. I am glad that a lot of them are changing their minds. His approval rating has declined significantly, and if you take a 10 or 12 point drop in approval rating on a variety of subjects, and you cast that across a huge population of America, you're talking about tens of millions of Americans changing their minds. And, we're so entrenched these days that for someone to change their mind takes an awful lot.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And just for example, my mom is very active in her local senior center, and she has had friends confide in her that, hey, I voted for Trump and now I regret it. I don't like what's going on. And I said, that's great, Mom. Make sure you thank them and tell them, I'm glad you came around and now you realize, and now you need to do something about it. So, vilifying the other side is never a good idea, but it is also, it's sad that, concepts like hypocrisy seem to be dead because it was the right that was telling us to beware from a overactive federal government that was going to use the military against us, because here you've seen it in L.A. and D.C., ICE all over the place, this overuse of force across the board. And now it seems to be that's okay. That's not a problem.
Has Bearing Witness been able to set up a good communication outreach format online, a presence online?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually a member of their communications team, and one of the best things and first things that communications team did was put together a website. So let me give that to you. It's bearingwitnessne.org. You go there, you'll find out all the information you need about the standout on Wednesdays. You'll also be able to find out the information about the other groups that protest. So Mondays and Tuesdays is a group called Fix ICE. Wednesdays is Bearing Witness. Thursdays is Justice for All. Saturdays is No Fear Street Theater. You can get information about all of those groups. If you want to chip in, you want to get involved, you'll find links to Luce, Bijan, Fuerza. You can get that information online.
And again, it's bearingwitnessne.org. I assume the NE is for New England?
Yes, it is. And that's also true of this facility, that this is the headquarters for ICE activity all across New England.
So this is controlling essentially what's going on in Maine?
So they do have another field office in Maine. It's much smaller from what I've seen. So the ICE operations that are carried out, predominantly planned in this facility, if you're there sometime, particularly any hours other than Bearing Witness, you will see the big black and white vans heading out, coming back, and those vans are not the ones that actually do the abducting. They tend to go out to an area, have undercover cars that will arrest the people, bring them back to some holding location in a parking lot somewhere, and they'll transfer them to these vans. And then those vans will be brought back to Burlington, brought around to the backside of the building behind a fence, and unloaded and brought into the building.
One of the features of what you're doing has been standing out at the airport, at the Hanscom field. What has been going on with that?
So it's incredibly strategic. So their plan is to go conduct these arrests, and then they want to deport the people. One of the biggest threats to them on that is the Massachusetts courts. So the best thing for them to do to deny people their due process rights is to get them out of state as quickly as possible. And Hanscom Field is a mere 15 minutes away, and so people have been whisked away very quickly by using Hanscom and transported faraway sites in Louisiana and Texas where the courts are not so favorable for immigrants. This also makes it just difficult for their legal representation to find them in order to file what's called habeas. Habeas corpus is basically illegal imprisonment. You're challenging that the government has a right to detain you. And if they don't know where you are, they can't file habeas for you. If it's happening, if they whisk you off to another state like Louisiana, that habeas filing has to be made in Louisiana. So then they've got to get a counsel in another state to file that. So Hanscom is incredibly strategic. A lot of groups know that. None, as far as I know, were on this earlier than the Lexington Alarm and their president, Toby Sackton. But by going to Burlington and reading and telling the stories that we tell at Burlington, you would notice Hanscom come up again and again and again, these stories where people are taken, then they're transferred from Hanscom to these other states. So when people said we need to have a protest at Hanscom, everybody said yes, absolutely on board. Concord Indivisible, that is, proposed a standout at the Hanscom Rotary, and people jumped on board to that real quick. A coalition formed. There's about 9 groups that are part of that De-Ice Hanscom Coalition, and that's been really effective, raising public awareness. We also have done some really great work getting data and publicizing that data about how many people. So 6,000 people were flown out of Massachusetts through Hanscom in 2025. That got press coverage in the Boston Globe. We were able to get that published, and Maura Healey wrote a letter calling on ICE to end this practice of flying people out of state without due process. We're trying to pressure the airlines that do business with ICE. There were initially 3. There were Avelo, Eastern Airways, and Global X. Well, Avelo has dropped out of the ICE flight business, so that leaves us with 2 that we can continue to pressure. And now the latest that the team has come up with, and I'll credit Toby Sackton at the Lexington Alarm and Cindy, basically Hanscom has on the books this 60-seat rule. If you're going to fly a flight that has more than 60 seats, you need a waiver. And so the legal analysis says that Massport, which has the authority at Hanscom, could just not grant those waivers to ICE anymore. Now, they can't do that and be discriminatory about it, but ICE has been flying 2 to 3 flights a week, and the waivers do not have to be granted on an ongoing basis for a repeating flight pattern. For things like the New England Patriots, the Boston Bruins occasionally fly out of Hanscom, that's the kind of one-off situation that they make a flight, once a month, twice a month. That's a different deal than 2-3 flights a week. So there's a full analysis of all that. You got to go to the Lexington Alarm website. Amazing write-up on that if you are interested. There's also an ongoing letter campaign to try and pressure Massport and the governor to take even more action.
And I know there's a letter-writing campaign or a card-writing campaign to get these providers of fuel to also change their
That's an excellent point. So you can't operate flights without fuel and some other basic services, and those are all supplied by a company known as Signature Aviation. So unfortunately, we can't boycott. One of the reasons the Avelo was first to drop out of it is they also had a commercial passenger business that people could boycott. These other companies are a little bit harder to get after.
One of the things that people here in the Boston area may be aware of is something that took place in Alston. And I was wondering if you could give us a status update and a sense of what happened in that, and how does that in part speak to some of the complexities of this situation, and indeed the incredible lack of coherence in ICE policy.
Was this the car wash?
Yeah, the car wash.
Yeah, the Alston car wash happened on November 4th. An incredible number of vehicles, I think it was either 13 or 17 vehicles, rolled into the car wash, and they just grabbed people. A lot of these workers had documents like work permits and IDs and whatnot inside the building. ICE did not let them retrieve any of those documents. So they ended up grabbing 9 people and bringing them to Burlington.
7 of whom were Americans, had papers, had green cards or whatever.
Yeah, they had different levels of documentation, but 7 of them were fairly quickly out on bond. So, and the reason for that is they filed for the habeas corpus. We discussed that a little bit earlier, and that's done in the district courts, not in the immigration courts. So basically challenging the terms of their detention. But the Elson Car Wash is such an interesting case. So their lawyer on it, a guy named Todd Palmer, and he spoke to the press a lot about it. And I loved his statement that he said, this is an unconstitutional merry-go-round. First, they go in without probable cause, without warrants, snatch them out of the place of work, don't let them get their identifications. Then they whisk them off to an illegal prison in Burlington and detain them and try to deny them bond. And then you have to go and file a habeas petition in district court to try and challenge that detention. And then you have to pay for it all, and you have to go do fundraising to get the bond amounts paid for, and therefore it's an unconstitutional merry-go-round.
You're listening to Radio with a View. One of our most dedicated listeners texted in just now. I am so glad that there are dedicated, thoughtful activists like him, meaning our guest Todd Palmer, out in the streets. Warm regards. So thank you. Thank you to Barry for texting in, and thank you to Todd. Mark, a question. Do you want to go out with music, or do you want to continue the conversation? What do you want? We have about 9 minutes left in the show.
Oh, my goodness.
What do you want to do?
Oh, so many decisions. Is there anything that you feel wasn't sufficiently discussed that you would like to bring forth to our listeners? Because
Sure.
I think this is a chance for people to hear things.
Yeah, I happened to read just yesterday. Our basic point on all this is that people shouldn't be held for multiple days in this facility. Just yesterday in the Portland News was this story about people transferred from Portland. ICE was conducting their operation called Catch of the Day, and people were transferred down to Burlington from Maine. And I'll read you this quote from a woman, Lograi Tuzalana. They put me in a little room with 50 women, adding that showers were not allowed and that there was only one toilet for all to share. Everyone was feeling bad, sick. Many people could not breathe properly. People were falling down because of the conditions. The food was like dog food. This is in Massachusetts. I know the rooms that she's talking about. I assume she's talking about what they call the large holding rooms. These rooms, I've looked at it on the floor plan, and judging from the spacing of the columns, these rooms are about 20 feet by 12 feet. Can you imagine 50 people crammed into such a space with one toilet? Now, in the same article, it goes in and it quotes lawyers who had multiple clients there, say that their clients have been there for 10 days. 10 days in those conditions. One of them is a man who recently had surgery and was therefore utilizing a walker. Why would you detain somebody that is using a walker to get around? Are we going to say this guy is a flight risk?
It's about cruelty.
Yeah.
I can't describe it any other way.
Well, and it's about terrorizing communities.
Exactly.
It's about putting fear into communities throughout the country.
And let's face it, the federal infrastructure has really always been in the states, but it's never been, you guys, Mark, you're older than me, has it ever been used like this? Has it ever been used like this?
No, not like this. Well, it was used like this during various wars to arrest and imprison people based on either cause or their ethnicity, their racial identity. Japanese citizens were picked up during World War II.
True.
So it's been used for this, always for the worst purposes.
Listeners, Deb and Peter write in on the text line, 617-253-8810. Fabulous program this morning. Super important information. Everything's being really well said. Thank you for all your work. Todd Palmer, thank you so much. You make us sound so much better, right, Mark?
Absolutely. Todd, I want to thank you for being with us here on Radio with a View. And unfortunately, we do have to say that the views and opinions expressed here are those of the participants, and they don't necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of WMBR, the Technology Broadcasting Corporation, or MIT. But I think it does in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
Yeah.